Okay, so now coming back to the lesson on page number 41. Round a city, the Trojans had built a strong wall. Now the city also had to be protected because enemies could come and attack. So what did the Trojans do? They had built a strong wall so that no enemy should attack them from the sea. Yes, now sea was required of course for them for trading, but sea, even the enemy ships could come and attack them. So they had built a very big and strong wall, and the wall was so strong that they could be well protected, so that the enemy should attack, no enemy should attack them from the sea. The wall was so broad, broad means very broad, that people could stand and sit and walk on it. Okay, people could stand also on the wall, sit also, walk also on the wall. So broad it was. The great gates open, and the people could go to the seashore outside and come in as they pleased. Yes, now the wall was built around the city, so there were big gates also. One big gate was there. Okay, only one gate, which it was kept open when there was peace, no more enemy attack and all. So people could go out to the seashore, enjoy themselves, and come back as and when they wanted. But in time of war, but whenever there is to be a war, enemy attack, the gates would be closed. What they would do? They would close the gates. And then the city was like a strong fortress, like a strong fort. No one could attack. Okay, it was very strong, quite safe from all attack, protected by the walls surrounding it. And it was protected by the walls surrounding it as well as by the hills behind it, because the hills, Mount Ida was so high that no enemies could climb and enter their city, and the walls were so strong that no enemy could break and enter it, because when the attack is to be, war is to be, the gates is to be closed. Okay, thus Troy was a strong city. This made Troy a very strong city, strongly protected by its walls and strongly defended by its brave soldiers. And to add to it, their soldiers also were very brave. But all the king and heroes of Greece had declared war against the Trojans. But all the kings and heroes means who? The warriors. Who is heroes? The warriors of Greece had declared war against the Trojans. Now why did they declare the war? Let us see. Because Paris, now Paris is the name of a prince. A prince of Troy had persuaded Helen. Persuaded means he had convinced. Yes, he had forced Helen. Helen, wife of a Greek king, Menelaus. Now Menelaus was the king of Sparta. Okay, Sparta is a Greek island. And what did Paris do? He forced Helen to elope with him. To elope with him. Elope means run away forcibly with him. Elope and marry him. Okay. Now Helen, I told you, was the most beautiful woman, but she was married to whom? To the king Menelaus. Okay. But Paris, yes, the prince of Troy. Prince means Rajkumar. He forced her to elope. Elope yani run away with him and marry him. Okay. He had brought her to Troy, and he had brought her to Troy. So this made the Greeks very angry. Kyun? Kyunki he's the queen. Queen was taken by the prince of Troy. The Greeks wanted to take revenge, and the Greeks को बदला लेना था. They wanted to take revenge on Troy for the wrong done to Menelaus, because naturally it was something wrong, taking someone else's wife and running away. So it was wrong. So what did they do? They decided to attack Troy. and all the other kings and all supported King Menelaus. They sailed to Troy. Sailed means what? They came in their ships. Yes, their sail ships. That time there were no mechanized ships. They came in their boats, in their ships to Troy and laid siege to the city. Now, what do you mean by laid siege? They surrounded the city. Okay, near the seashore. They surrounded. Now, it was like they declared war. So now the people of Troy could not come out. So what happened? The gates were closed. Why? Because it was an attack. The Trojans too fought hard, and the siege continues for 10 long years. Now, when the Greeks came, yes, and they laid siege, there is to be fights and battles and all. Sometimes all people is to come out together, they is to come out together and fight and battle. Sometimes two heroes together, warriors together, single fights. Okay, and such fights took how many years? 10 long years. The fighting went on daily, and every day there is to be fights. But the siege did not end, but the capture, yes, the Greeks who had surrounded the city did not end. They waited there only on that seashore there. On one hand, the Greeks could not take the city. One hand, the Greeks tried very much to attack and capture the city, but they could not take the city. Now, what means could not take the city? They could not capture the city. And on the other hand, the Trojans could not force them to sail away. The Trojans could not force them. They could not fight against them so bravely that they would run away. Every day the Trojans came out of their gates and the Greeks came out of their tents and ships, and the fighting went on. Now, Trojans means not the common people, only the warriors. Yes, the battle, it was like a battle. So the warriors would come out of the gate and the Greeks would come out of their ships and the fighting would go on. Okay, sometimes there were great battles between the two armies. Sometimes there were single fights. Only one warrior from Troy, one warrior from the Greeks. Between two great heroes. Heroes means warriors. Sometimes the Trojans had the better of it. Sometimes who would win in that single battle or the army? The Trojans. And sometimes the Greeks. Sometimes the Trojans had the better of it and sometimes the Greeks. But still the fighting went on. The fighting did not end because there were many Trojan warriors and there were many Greek warriors. Great heroes on both sides were killed in the course of the war. And many heroes, many great warriors were killed. Yes, on both the sides. After leading the defense of his city for 9 years, the brave Hector was at last killed. The brave Hector was at last killed by Achilles, whom none could resist. Now, Achilles was the brave hero on the Greek side and Hector on the Troy side, whom no one. But Achilles himself was killed later on by a poisoned hero that entered his heel. Yes. Now, what is heel? The lower part of your feet, the back part of your feet, because that was the only part where he could be wounded. And what had entered? A poisoned arrow. Still later, Paris himself was killed. Even Paris, who had taken Helen of Troy, he also was killed. But the fight went on, continued, because they wanted to take away Helen. Also by a poisoned arrow. The Trojans were tired of being shut up in the city. Now, Trojans who liked to come out freely, yes, to the seashore and all, they were fed up. They were entirely tired of being in the city, shut up in the city. And the Greeks were longing to see their homes again. And it had been a long time since the Greeks came and it was taking so many years, 10 long years. Students, the Greeks were away from their homes and they wanted to go back to their homes, but still the fighting went on. The fighting did not end. Okay, now we will do, in the next lecture we will do part 2. Okay, and then we'll do the exercises. Okay.